We've mentioned the importance of goals in the self-regulatory process. The research clearly supports a strong focus on getting the goals right because of the gains in academic performance when this is done well. As you can see there, 16 to 41%. And there's a great quote that's worth reflecting on, being metacognitive about, and the goals are cognitive representations. They're kind of images in our mind of future events, which is meeting these desired goals, and will influence motivation in a number of ways through 5 processes. And here they are. It directs the instruction, the actions towards the goal, focuses on what needs to be learnt, and gets us to recognize that maybe we have to put different effort in at different times, and that way we can manage our volition and our persistence, and to recognize that sometimes this is going to be a tough climb, but I've got to stay with it because that's the only way I'm going to get there. And to plan our strategy, which is very important in terms of how we're going to go about the learning process, and what resources we need to access and who we might need to work with. And it's a benchmark, it's a reference point. For example, I often try to lose weight, and I might set myself a goal of say 7 kg in the next 3 weeks. Well, what that means is if I've found that I've lost 3 in the first week, it gives me some feedback and say, hold on Dennis, you're getting there. Just stay with the task and all should work out. A bit more on goals. Well, what makes an effective goal? Specific and challenging. Clearer than it is to you, and the fact that the goal is one that will make you learn something better or develop a better skill or a valuable skill, gives you that kind of motivation and interest. So there's a balance here. How challenging? Well, it should be challenging but achievable with effort. It's a kind of Cinderella goal. As teachers, we have to think about how can we get our students to develop themselves, but not give them tasks that are way beyond their capability, because that has the opposite effect of being frustrating and leading them perhaps to not think they're terribly good at this kind of activity. So that's a challenge, but as you can see, there's a good effect size for it. Again, if students are involved in setting goals for themselves that they value, it's more likely to affect their motivation. And here's some main ways. Giving students autonomy, choice, obviously makes them more empowered and see the tasks as relevant, as opposed to giving them tasks to do and goals that they're not really interested in the first place and can't see much purpose in. It affects their effort to attain the goals, because if they value those goals, they're more likely to want to put more effort in and be able to maintain that. And the same thing with persistence. And it makes them feel better, the effective reactions. If the goal is one that is interesting and makes them feel good, it's going to have a better impact. However, important point to note here that, it helps if students buy into the goals, of course, but those goals, according to some researchers, and it would fit my experience, that if the teacher introduces goals that the students see as meaningful and having a purpose, even if they didn't think of them in the first place, but buy into them, that's equally valuable. So, when teachers help students connect to the goals, have personal meaning for them, much greater chance that they'll be motivated to engage in the sometimes, and this is a big one, isn't it, the hard work, the effort required in learning. Finally, in this video, we go back to episode 2 when we looked at how learning occurs and the role of thinking in learning. So this is just a bit of a reinforcer that when you learn, you've got to take in information as input. And there's also processing. We talk about the thinking and developing understanding, and storing this useful picture of what we're learning, mental schemata in psychological terms, in our long-term memory system. And invariably, we have to apply it in situations, the kind of output. And to reinforce the point, it will involve students doing this cognitive work, thinking, which is tiring. The brain, as we saw, is not really designed for thinking, and that's a little bit like we'd like to be super fit, but going in the gym and doing all the sweaty work, maybe we're not so keen on that. But it's essential that students realise they've got to do this mental activity of thinking. And if they don't do that, they're not going to build the understanding, and that gives them the learning power. Great quote from Daniel Willingham, famous cognitive scientist. Memory is what's left after thinking. And as we saw in episode 2, that this kind of notion that memory is bad and thinking is good is kind of dangerous nonsense. It's all about our effort and our ability to process information, to build up understanding of what we're learning and storing that effectively in long-term memory. And this is the point again, that to get good at things we need to practice, but it's not just practice, it's deliberate practice. And we know what deliberate practice is. It's when it's planned to move us realistically with challenging but achievable learning goals, so that we build up our confidence and competence. And remember, as you get better at something, you're more likely to feel more confident about doing it, i.e. to meet the existent learning goals.